Thank you for all coming to celebrate the life of Charles Butch Plummer. If you were here, my dad would probably be wondering what we're all doing in church on a perfectly good Saturday instead of spending it on the beach. We all know that was his favorite place to be. Because he was such a multifaceted man, Butch meant so much to all of us here, in different ways. Shortly after his passing in January, I wrote a post to try and capture what my dad meant to me and to our family. That tribute only scratched the surface. How do you even begin to paint a picture of a man who was so immensely talented, intelligent, and artistic? Such a wonderfully complex person who was often stoic and mysterious, a self-proclaimed realist, but at the same time was so likable, able to disarm anyone with his charming presence, his insightfulness, and his unique brand of wit. So, for this family remembrance, I asked some of you to share a memory you had of Butch, a way he helped you, something he made for you, something he said that was meaningful to you. Perhaps in this way we could create together a more complete memory of the man he was. We can all agree that Butch was a Renaissance man. Whatever he did it well. He was a carpenter, a builder, a visual artist, a writer, a teacher, a medic in the service, just about anything he set his mind to be. In his spare time, he fished, sailed, gardened, and anything that got him outdoors. From a young age, Butch showed a propensity for any kind of physical activity. He was the star of Little League Baseball. Headlines frequently touted Plummer of the Police Pistol Club. In high school, he boasted the highest batting average in the state. Butch was also a gifted amateur gymnast and a natural-born long-distance runner. In his young adult years, he would jog up and down St. Pete Beach almost every day. If he wasn't moving that meat, as he would say, he wasn't happy. Butch also had an extraordinary life of the mind. His curiosity and passion for learning and self-improvement were lifelong. He was always observing, listening, positing, devising solutions. An avid reader, he would devour books on any topic, especially biographies, religious and spiritual texts, and even encyclopedias, and then would write his own book reports and essays just for fun. He was personable and charismatic, easily entering people's trust. He was willing to strike up a conversation with just about anybody out of a real curiosity to learn their own personal experience and perspective. He usually didn't hesitate to offer them a helping hand. Learn as much as you can from every situation, he once wrote to me in a letter, and be certain that every situation does have useful lessons inherent in the duty itself, or in the knowledge you gain from other people. To me, this was the common thread binding together everything my father did, his ability to glean lessons by always observing people and the world, to find the meaning in everyday trials and tribulations, to see the profound in the mundane. So, what do your stories tell us about Charles Plummer? He was an unstoppable force of creativity. On entering the church today, you will have all seen the huge fresco with the perfectly painted heron in the center, amidst a typically Floridian scene of mangroves in the foreground and a blood-red sun setting in the background. There's no better way to understand my dad than by appreciating this piece of artwork. The many hours he spent mastering the fresco technique and perfecting his brushstrokes to create a scene typical of the state he loved. And this was just one of the many paintings and drawings Butch did over the years, many as gifts for family and friends, like a painting of a trout he did for Uncle Frank, and an illustrated menu he drew up on the fly when Jake was visiting, Jake's Key West cuisine. Many of these artworks were commissioned for local businesses. The huge mural on Ham's Art Supply on Central Avenue and 18th Street. The drawings he did for the menus at Skyway Jack's with his signature comical flair. The paintings that hung in the lobby of the Detroit Hotel in downtown St. Pete for over 2 decades. A prolific but unassuming artist, Butch is part of the history and fabric of St. Pete. He was a health nut before it was even a thing. In our house, I remember Dad insisted on cooking most of the meals. I usually could tell dinner was ready when I smelled the brown rice burning. Abandoned on the stove when he continued working on his latest project in the garage. Renee recalls walking into Graham's house while he was cooking, pouring in some mystery concoction from a big glass bottle with a piece of tape on it that read, "Tornado juice." And how many of us remember his special recipe, super healthy hockey puck biscuits? He was a fantastic storyteller with a fantastical imagination. The chicken bear. All the Plumbers know the cautionary tale of family lore about a strange creature first spotted in Uncle Dib's woods around the Goose Pond. It was when Robin asked Uncle Butch to help her with a school project about family stories that he first put the tale to paper. Once upon a time, there was a kind of bear, gold and brown in color, that had special triple-jointed legs. It enabled it to jump, climb, and run better than any other animal in existence. No one believed Uncle Dib about the bear until a fateful day, his beloved old Red, the meanest, fiercest, boldest rooster a person had ever seen, was mangled in a storm of feathers and fur, and piercing squawks and thunderous growls. But somehow, in the middle of this life and death struggle between chicken and bear, a composite creature was created, the chicken bear. Fast and elusive as his mother bear, he could slip into your house, snatch an ear of corn out of a boiling hot kettle, and be gone before you could blink an eye. Corn is one of his favorite foods, he wrote. Must be the chicken in him. To this day, the Plumbers stay on the lookout for this mischievous beast, lest he nab their sandwich unawares, or abscond with a plate of food. On occasion, little Plumbers, huddled by campfires and fearing the chicken bear will make it to their neck of the woods, stuff their faces with bubble gum in a vain attempt to keep the monster at bay. He challenged authority, rules, and routines. Some of you may remember Butch's '57 Chevy. John told me that one year Butch was irritated that he had to renew the registration decal on his license plate. So what did he do? Rather than shell out a few bucks for the new sticker, he took out his brush and got to work, meticulously painting over the decal with that year's orange background and blue numbers. Coincidentally, also the colors of his alma mater. Apparently, you couldn't even tell the difference unless you got up close. He made it through that year scot-free. Later in life, he became more philosophical about following instructions. In a letter to me, he wrote, "Work is not a lot of fun lately. It would be nice to decide what work you want to do and not be compelled by necessity to execute the whims of others or take care of other people's property. I spent the weekend, Saturday and most of Sunday, putting together Taiwan-made office furniture by the numbers. All the hardware was not included. Particle board is unforgiving if you have to reset a screw and easily damaged and scratched. Then, the receptionist was displeased with the desk configuration, which she claimed was not the one she picked out of the book. Fortunately, I had nothing to do with that decision. But as they say, nothing's easy. Every type of endeavor has its drudgery, senseless repetition, and displeasing aspects. It makes for the development of patience." I bet you could all hear him saying that. He made us all laugh. When he wanted to be, Butch was the life of the party, regaling us with curious anecdotes and obscure factoids, always with a heavy dose of his signature dry wit. Usually, it was a quip that came out of left field. After his accident, he was still making us laugh, whether it was an unexpected recitation of Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy, an Elvis impersonation, or his own rendition of the Stones' "You Can't Always Get What You Want." He was a deep thinker, and he cared deeply too. In the 70s, Butch worked for PARC, assisting mentally and physically challenged people become proficient at a vocation. It was before my time, but I'm told he was perfect for the job. Kay remembers her telling the story of two men whose only job it was to cut landscape timbers using a table saw. One would push the log down the table to the mark, and the other would lower the blade to cut it. They did this all day, every day. One day, Butch asked them how long they had been doing this job. 5 years, one replied. If you could change one thing about your job, what would it be? He asked. Can we switch? Butch conceded. Elated, the men took to their new jobs. Now the other man sliding while the other man cut. To celebrate, they wanted to have lunch at McDonald's, but not one close to their work, the one across town so they could make the journey by bus. Butch indulged them, but he gave them a head start and then secretly followed them the whole way in his car like an undercover cop to make sure they would be okay. What a sight, he told Kay later, to see them in the window of McDonald's as they chomped down on their hamburgers and gave each other high fives. The scene was hilariously heartwarming. Having a writer's spirit, Kay told me, Butch could grasp the uniqueness of every situation and what a great story could be told of it. But at the heart of this story is the fact that my dad cared enough to listen and make their simple wish come true. Years later, Butch was to come full circle at the Broach School, giving lessons in all subjects to students with special needs. Not content to use the standard curriculum, he would craft each lesson according to the needs and interests of the kids, handwriting exercises and tests, inventing games, and writing scripts for plays for them to perform. My mom says he was the happiest she had ever seen him while he was working with those kids, preparing them to be everything they could be. When he had the accident, some of the kids wrote him letters and came to visit him in the hospital. Which brings me to my dad's incredible strength and resilience. All of you here know how 15 years ago, my father persevered against all odds, returning from the brink of death when he was involved in a very serious traffic accident. He suffered horrific bodily and mental trauma. He had to be reattached, reinforced, and retaught. Without great doctors, Celia Plummer's unwavering love and dedication, and a miracle, he never would have returned to any semblance of life. But it was also his own strength of body and mind that brought him back to stay with us to his 79th year. In closing, I'd like to imagine what Butch might say to us now. Don't fret, I've just shuffled off this mortal coil. As the Indian yogi and guru Lahiri Mahasaya wrote, he wrote this in a letter to me one time, reflect that someday you will suddenly have to leave everything in this world, so make the acquaintance of God now. Through delusion, you are perceiving yourself as a bundle of flesh and bones, which at best is a nest of troubles. Cease being a prisoner of the body. Learn to escape into spirit. And remember, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need.